In this lecture, we're going to look at how the basic Qt data types are mapped on the Qt-Quick side. You need to know about this if you are going to do any kind of interaction between Qt C++ and Qt-Quick. In most cases, you're going to have your Qt C++ basic types automatically converted to the basic types that are available in QML. The table here says more about that. The bool type on Qt C++ type is turned into a bool type on the QML side. Integers are turned into integers. And in most times on the Qt C++ side, if you take out the Q, you're going to be left with the data type on the QML type. So QString is turned into a string, QURL becomes URL. You get the idea. The same with colors, font, dates, and whatever you see here. Okay, now that you have this information, we're going to go to Qt Creator and play with us. Here we are in Qt Creator. We are going to create our project. It's going to be a Qt Quick application. We're going to call it Conversion Basic Types Demo. Save it in a location on our drive. Choose our Qt version. Choose the kit we want. We choose the desktop one as usual and finish. The first thing we want to do is to add a class that is going to help us communicate between C++ and Qt-Quick. Select the project, tick Add New. It's a class we want. It's going to be called CPP class. We want to inherit QObject. Hit Next and Finish. Go to the header file. To simulate the exchange of data between C++ and Qt-Quick, we are going to emit a bunch of signals with parameters, and we are going to catch these parameters on the Qt-Quick side. So let's define a signal that is going to send an integer. It's going to be void send int, and it's going to have an int parameter. And we're going to put in a slot that is going to trigger the emission of this signal. We're going to call this slot from Qt-Quick. So we should say void cpp slot, just like this, and implement it in the cpp file. And what we want to do in here is emit send int, and we want to put in some int value. Let's say 1, 2, 3. We need to have some kind of buttons or something that is going to trigger the call of this method. Let's go back to QML and cook that up. Let's change the title here to something more descriptive. We want to import Qt Quick controls because we need a button. And we're going to put a button control in here. ID is going to be mbutton as usual. The text is going to be Quick Me. How creative. And we are going to put an onClick signal handler. And in here, we are going to call the C++ class. The class object is going to be exposed as a context property, and we are going to expose that as CPP class. So we're going to say CPP slot here. And this will do. We don't need a semicolon here. Now we want to come back to main to finish our plumbing here. We include QML context. You probably know this already. We also want to include our CPP class and define an instance of CPP class here and call it CPP class. Now we want to expose our object here. We should say engine root context set context property. It's going to be CPP class, and we're going to pass in a reference to our CPP class object here. Now, if we run the application, notice that in QML, we are just going to see a button. When we click on the button, we are going to call the CPP slot. The slot is going to emit the signal, and the signal is intended to be received in Qt-Quick. Let's put a debug statement here to make sure that we are getting this method called. And we should say qdebug cpp slot called. This will do. Let's make the C lowercase. Run the application. Okay, if you click the button, we should see this message here, and we are. Now we want to connect to be able to receive the signal in QtQuick. There are many ways you can do this already, but we are going to use the connections component in QtQuick to capture signals coming from the C++ class that we exposed in main here. Let's go back to QML, put in a connections component. The target is going to be CPP class, and we are going to say on sendEnt. Remember that our signal is called sendEnt, so we say on, capitalize the first letter, and put in the signal name. This is how you capture it in QtQuick. Inside the signal handler here, we are going to put a console log statement saying that we received an integer in QtQuick from C++. We are going to say the parameter that we received, and we are going to use this type of operator to print out the type of the data that we received. Now, you have to be careful about this param here because the name of the parameter is coming from C++. It is right here, param. And this is what you should use to read the data back in QtQuick. Now, if we run the application, we are going to see the message here that CPP slot is called, but we should also see this console log message here. Let's run the application. Ready? Click. And you see that QML received integer 123, the type is number. All the numbers in QtQuick are represented by the number data type. And you see that what we just saw in the tables in the slide is applying here. We are sending an integer and we are receiving an integer in QtQuick. Okay, we should play with other data types as well. So we're going to send double, void send double param. We should say double param here to have some difference. And we should emit the signal in CPP slot. And we should say 123.45. This will do. We want to comment out the integer signal so that we are not confused. We should go back to QML and say on send double, we can copy this, put that in here, and say received double. It's going to be double param now, and double param. Let's run the application. If we click, we should receive double here. Its type is also going to be number. We're going to put in another signal that is going to send a bool, a real, and a float. We are going to go to the CPP file, comment out the double one, and put our signal emitted here. Actually, you can uncomment these things if it doesn't confuse you. On the QtQuick side, we should put in the signal handler. I'm going to just put it in here. I don't want to type all this. We captured the bool parameter, the real parameter, and the float parameter. Let's run the application. Click. Bool is true, the real is this one, and the float is this number here. And they are all numbers, real and float. Now that you have the idea, I am going to put a bunch of other signals that I want to emit. There is one for strings and URLs, one for colors and font, date, point, size, and rect. We are going to emit the signal for string URL. The string is this one, the URL is this one. We are going to capture that in QML. I am going to put in a signal handler like this, Control A, Control I to align. And if I run, I should see my string and URL console log messages here. So we haven't imported QURL in C++. We should do that. Let's import QURL. We should also import a bunch of other classes that we are going to need for these signals. You see, we need QColor, QDate, QPoint. We should include these. I am going to do this in a batch here. Let's run now. Okay, let's bring the application output pane up. Click to see our string is here, our URL is here. They are received. And you notice that the URL is an object now. It is recognized as an object in Qt-Quick. It's a JavaScript object. Now we want to send color and font. We go to the CPP file and do that. To be able to play with this color, I am going to go to main QML here and put a rectangle on top of the button. ID is going to be mrect. Width is going to be 200. Height is going to be 200. Color is going to be black by default. It's going to have a radius of 20 to make it have round borders. And the button should be below the rectangle here. So we should say encores tap mrect button. Okay, let's run to see what we have now. Okay, we have our rectangle here. We can now capture the signal in Qt-Quick and put in our console log statement, Control-A, Control-I to align. And we are going to say the color and the font that we receive. Let's run and see what we get. Okay, click the button. The color is this one and the font is this one. Okay, you see that the font is interpreted as a string and the color is interpreted as an object. Now, how do you read some data from this? For example, if we wanted to capture the red, green, and blue component of the color, how would we do that? We can close this, go down below here, and put a statement like this. And you see that you can call the components on the color by saying the name of the color parameter and saying .r, .g, and .blue. You probably know all of this if you took some Qt-Quick course before. We can also do the same to access the properties of the font. For example, we can capture the family of the font and whether or not the font is bold. Let's run the application to show this in action. If we click on the button, we are going to send the signal and we are going to say the red component is this one, the green component is this one, the blue component is this one, the font is Times and it is bold. And if you look on C++, this is exactly what we sent here. Okay, the font is Times and it is bold. We can actually use these values on the QML side. For example, we can change the color of this rectangle to be the color that we sent from C++. The way you would do that, you would say mrect color equals color param, just like this. You can also change the font of the text of the button here. So you can say mbutton font equals font param, just like this. Let's run the application, and if we're lucky, we're going to see our changes. Let's click. You see that the color of the rectangle changes, and you see the font of the button changes to be a little bit bigger. This is how you can use the data that you send from C++. The next target of ours is going to be date. We're going to send a date from C++. We can go to the CPP file and actually send a date just like this. We are going to capture the date information on Qt-Quick the usual way on sendDate signal handler. And we're going to say that we received a date. It's going to be date param. And we can extract some information in the date object that we received. Let's run the application to see this. Okay, the app is here. And if you click, you're going to see that we received a date. It's going to be displayed in my locale here. I am using a Chinese locale, but you can see the day information, the month, the year, the time, and you can see that this is an object. And we can extract the year, the month, the day of the week, and the day of the month. In C++, we specified a direct date like this, but you can also pass in the current date. The way you can do that, you can say emit send date, Q date, current date. You can do this. Let's run the application and see what we get. We bring the app up a little bit, and you see that this is the current date and the current time in here. The year is this one, the month is this one, and the day of the week is this one. You can see that all these things are indexed starting from 0. Right now we are in October, but you see 9 here. That's because it is indexed from 0. So the 10th month is going to be 9. We're going to go back to the header file and see our next target. It is going to be send point here. We are going to send a point from C++. We are going to send a point like this, point information, 1 point and 1 Q point F with decimal points. We are going to capture the point on Qt Quick side, just like this, Control A, Control I to align. We're going to say what we received, and we are going to extract some information, the X, Y coordinates for the points in here. Let's run the application, bring this up a little bit, click, and you're going to see point information, the points that we sent, and you see that they are objects. That's why we are able to extract information using the dot notation that you see here. Let's go and see our next target. The next target is going to be send size. We are actually going to do all this together to save some time. Now you have an idea of how this works. Let's go to the CPP file and send a size and a rectangle. The size is going to be this. We're also going to use QSizeF to send sizes with decimal points, and we're going to do the same with rectangles. A rectangle with decimal points and another one without decimal points. We're going to go to Qt Quick side and capture these things. Control A, Control I to align. We're going to capture the size here and output the data. The same thing for the rectangle, really, nothing special. Let's run the application. Click here, you see the rectangle, and you see the size information here. And I just went through all of this to give you concrete examples of how you can send data back and forth between Qt Quick and Qt C++. Now that we have been sending data from C++ to Qt Quick, what about sending data from Qt Quick to C++? We're going to define a few methods to play with this and just show you that it is also possible. I am going to define 2 methods that should be callable from Qt Quick, Control A, Control I to align. And I am going to implement them. You know all this already. And when we receive a point from Qt Quick, we say that we received a point. And we do the same when we receive a rect from QML. Now what is left is really calling these methods from Qt Quick and passing in the parameters that we should receive in here. Let's go back there. We're going to comment out the call to CPP slot here. We're going to say CPP class and receive point, and we should pass in a point. And the way to define a point, right now we're going to use the Qt global object, and the way you do that, you say Qt point, and you pass in the arguments for the X and Y coordinates for the point. Let's say 200 and 300, this will do. Let's run the application. Notice that the signals are not going to be emitted this time because we are commenting out this CPP slot that emits our signals. Right now, we are only interested in sending data from Qt Quick to C++. And that's what we do when we click on this button here, and you see that we receive the point in C++ from QML. We should also try to receive rect, CPP class receive rect. Now we can pass in our rect like this and put in our parentheses like this to get rid of the error. Let's comment out the receive point method so that we are not confused by this. And we should be able to receive the rectangle we sent in C++, and this is what we have here. And I hope this gives you a good example of how you can send the data back and forth between C++ and Qt Quick and Qt And the QML engine is doing all the transformations for us automatically. We don't need to do anything special. The QML engine is doing all the heavy lifting for us. Okay, I know this lecture was lengthy, but I wanted you to have a concrete example of how you can implement everything you see in the table here, passing the data back and forth between the two sides that we are interested in the course. This should be all for this lecture. In the next one, we're going to play with strings, dates, and numbers. I'll see you there.